This study is basically designed to test whether earlier snowmelt is affecting the flowering time of a couple of alpine species, although the data set we're using for today is on moss campion. And so what we're doing essentially is we use the natural variation in snowmelt all the way across Niwot Ridge to get a range of snowmelt conditions that range from kind of very early in the season, so kind of mimicking climate change conditions, or are more sheltered sites that would have snowmelt later in the season, like this site where we're at now. And so that's kind of mimicking those historical conditions when snowmelt was a lot later. And so what we think is happening is that advancing or earlier snowmelt could be basically shifting the flowering time of these species to be a lot earlier. And then that could have some consequences for fitness, or basically how much plants reproduce and grow and how healthy their populations are doing under climate change conditions. And so what we're doing here is we've mapped out these individual plants along basically a grid system. So we have X coordinates and Y coordinates. I think that's in the data set. And then each toothpick that you guys are seeing corresponds to a different plant that we've been monitoring flowering time and its reproduction and its growth on for a couple of years now. And so when we're taking data, we just kind of follow our grid down for each plant so that we can basically see whether it's flowering that day or not. And so we end up with this kind of crazy looking data sheets of yeses and nos. And from there, we can say that a certain plant flowered on a certain day, correlate that with when it experienced the earliest timing of snowmelt, and then from there, connect its fitness to its snowmelt experience and flowering time. So yeah, we just work our way down this transect and keep taking data. So this study is important because as climate change causes snowmelt to be earlier and earlier, these plants are not likely to keep up with that change. And so understanding kind of how at least flowering as a trait can help them potentially survive the effects of climate change could really help us kind of make predictions about how well they're going to do, or be able to say something about if we see a species that is flowering earlier, it might be more or less at risk based on how it's managing to change in time with the climate.